What's going on, guys? It's your boy Scrub here, back again with another video. Hope you guys are all having a great day. I know I am. About a couple days ago now, I made a video talking about this guy who was lost at sea for 133 days, and you guys enjoyed it, so I figured today I would put together another story time based on true events. And this time, it's gonna be the time people stole $40 million in today's money off of trains and actually managed to get away with it for quite a while. And to this day, most of the money has not been found. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the great train robbery of 1963. You would think that it's illegal. I'm getting quiet now. Lay low when you reach zone, piping down. Making out, stack the bread, cause you love the sound. Just someone. Alright, guys, so in reality, the Great Train Robbery was 2.6 million pounds that was stolen off of a train, the Royal Mail train. When you adjust that for inflation and convert it to US dollars, it's $40 million, but regardless, it was stolen off of a train on its way from Glasgow to London in the early hours of the 8th of August of 1963. At the time, it was one of the biggest heists ever, and to this day, when adjusted for inflation and considering how much money they ended up recovering, it still is one of the biggest. But we're gonna get into how this all happened. So, it all started with a still unnamed security officer within the Royal Mail itself who detailed that there was a large amount of money being carried on these trains. And he gets introduced to these two criminals that were gonna do the raid and gives them the information. And these two criminals are similarly known as Gordon Goody and Buster Edwards, which I may say are very, fantastic heist named. Gordon Goody and Buster? Yeah, that sounds like they're ready to rob a train at a moment's notice. Anyways, this senior officer gets introduced to these two men by this clerk, and they spend the next couple months coming up with this raid. Obviously, they knew there was a bunch of money on the line, so they're like, look, we don't need to rush into this, no need to blow our load before we're ready. We just gotta be patient and make sure that this is very planned out. And they end up recruiting a bunch of people, and it's like the best of the criminal underworld, you know? Realistically, they went around and picked some of the most successful people that were available in the criminal underworld at the time, but the only problem is, none of the people that were currently in the group had any experience in stopping trains, you know, they had no idea how to get this train to stop or how to rob one. So they end up going out and finding 3 other people to join the group that were accomplished train robbers. Now, I don't really know what that means. Apparently, back in the day, this was a common profession, yes, you know how to call up Mark, he's fantastic at robbing trains, but that's how it worked, dude. And at this point, the group had swelled up to around 16 people, and that's quite a bit when you're talking about a group for a heist. Usually, they try to keep it smaller because they have to split profits less ways, but because of just the sheer scale of having to stop a Royal Mail train and steal all this money, it ended up ballooning to around 16 people. Regardless, on the morning of August 7th, 1963, the train set off from Glasgow towards London. It was supposed to arrive the next morning at 4 a.m., and it was even being followed by another train just to make sure that it would get there on time. The train itself had 12 carriages and 72 staff members on board the carriages that were on the way down to London, and the goal of the staff wasn't security or anything. Their job was to just sort the mail on the train as it went to London, so it wasn't like the 16 guys had any massive armed force that they had to take once they got on the train. So there's a bunch of mail in Glasgow. They're getting more and more mail on each additional stop, and obviously, because this is before you could send money electronically, there's a lot of money in the mail. One of the carriages that was right behind the engine was known as what was called a high-value package coach, you know, a little bit more security because that's where they kept the stuff that really, really needed to get to London safely. It carried large quantities of money, official documents that needed to be sorted, basically anything that couldn't be lost. The value of a shipment at the time was usually about $300,000 in this HVP system, the high-value package system. But by luck, absolute luck, the previous weekend there was a holiday, so all these banks were sending in more money than usual because of the holiday. And what is usually 300,000 pounds of money is now 2.5 and 3 million. They didn't really have enough time to count all of it because they were picking it up as they went along, but it's estimated somewhere in the ballpark of 2.5 and 3 million pounds were on the train. The robbers, it's unknown, obviously, if they were like, yo, it's a holiday weekend, so there's gonna be more money, but obviously the train is more stacked than they ever expected. And what even luckier for these guys, you might be thinking, wow, that's really lucky for these criminals, but even more lucky for them. In August of 1963, there were these carriages, these HVP carriages, and they had gotten all these new security upgrades, you know, new alarms, bars over the windows, catches on the doors. But at the time of the robbery, these new ones that were super secure were out of service. So it just so happened that it's a holiday weekend with a crap ton more money on the train, and on top of that, the carts being used to transfer all the high value packages are the ones without any security. It is seriously mind-blowing how lucky these robbers got. They probably still would have gotten away with it anyways, but it was the perfect storm for them to get away with it. So at about 3 a.m. on the 8th of August, the driver of the train stops at a red light signal at the Sears crossing. He doesn't really know what the red light signal is there for. All he knows is that he has to stop, and it's the official railroad signal, so he has no reason to think it's not legit. The only problem is the signal wasn't legit. The robbers had tampered with it and covered the green light and then put a battery on the red light to make him stop. So obviously, because it was unexpected, the second in command of the train got off the train and went to call somebody with the telephone that was near the signal. And when he gets to the telephone, he's like, oh my God, all the cables on the phone are cut. We can't talk to anybody. So he's going back to the train to let him know that there's something fishy going on, and that's when the robbers just jump him. Meanwhile, while that guy's getting jumped outside, all of the other 16 people are flooding into the engine cabins from both sides, and they're just overpowering everybody. They decided that they were just gonna flood the cabin with massive amounts of people instead of having like a 1v1 situation. And Mills, one of the guys in the engine room, was the only person who was hurt during the robbery miraculously, and he got hit in the head and was rendered like semi-unconscious. They basically gave him a huge concussion. Hey guys, I'm gonna interrupt the video for just 1 second. On screen now is actually a gift card. I give one of these away every single day here on the channel as a way to just say thank you to everybody subscribed with their notifications on. If you're not a member of the group that apparently 80% of the people watching this video are not, then you might as well subscribe and turn on notifications because it's free. You can always unsub, and hey, I'm literally giving away free money, so you got nothing to lose. On that note, I will shut up and let you guys get back to your train robbery. Huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed with notifications on. It means the world, and yeah, enjoy. So by that point, they're like, all right, we've got the people subdued. Now we need to get the train to the location where we're gonna offload the money. They couldn't offload the money here for some reason. They had set up this marking like a half a mile away where they were gonna unload the money on this bridge. So they needed to get the train there. Now, they had hired this particular guy who had a bunch of experience driving trains. I guess he had worked driving trains for a while to be able to move the train and all the expensive carts and everything they needed to their new location. They obviously didn't want to take like the entire train. They just wanted the stuff that they needed. So they had hired this guy to like specifically drive the train. And he was an older guy who had a bunch of experience. Well, I guess he had never driven these types of trains before, because he gets into the area to like drive the train to the location and he's like, oh, I don't know how to drive this train whatsoever. So at that point, the robbers are standing around and they're like, well, we've already overtaken the train, so we need to get the money out of here. So they end up going back to the conductor that they had previously overpowered, that they're holding hostage, and they force him to drive the train to the location. So they get the train to the location by forcing the conductor to basically help them move it. They have weapons, he didn't. He really didn't have too much of a choice. And they get to the new location, they take the conductor that had just previously helped him, and with him being kind of dragged behind him, they go to the high value package carriage that still hadn't been broken into yet, and they look inside and they see 4 people. The 4 people inside of this carriage are not security guards, they're civilians. They don't really know what's going on. They have no security experience. And so when 16 men like break in, they don't really stand a chance whatsoever, dude. They get overpowered almost instantly. Once they're overpowered, they make everybody lay in the corner. They handcuff the conductor that had just helped them move the train here, and they just kind of lock them in this high-value package carriage while they're emptying it. So the robbers remove 120 sacks of stuff out of this high-value package carriage, and it takes them 20 minutes to do it. They formed a human chain with all 16 of them and just went to town emptying it as fast as possible. And they end up leaving the scene 30 minutes after the robbery had began. And in an effort to mislead these witnesses, right, they used 2 different Land Rover vehicles, but both of them had the same license plate. So that way when people were like, this car and this car, there were 2 cars with the same license plate, so they would be seen in 2 different places and it would just cause confusion. And honestly, you gotta give them credit, dude. That's a pretty efficient robbery standard to go from stopping the train to removing 128 bags of loot, getting in the car and leaving within 30 minutes is fast. That's basically like a NASCAR pit crew at just robbing people, which I would never recommend. So at that point, they start heading along all these minor roads, and they had a radio in the car listening to the police scanner. And for like 45 minutes, they're going back to this farm. And around the same time that they get to the farm is around the same time that the first reports of the crime start coming in. From listening to the radio, they can hear that the police had calculated that they had gotten to like 30 miles in a radius and they were kind of shutting down the crime scene. This declaration, though, was given by one of the witnesses, who apparently said that the robbers had told them not to move for 30 minutes. So the cops are like, all right, they told everybody not to move for 30 minutes. That's also how far they could have gotten away. So chances are they're hiding within this certain radius. But whatever, they go back to their hiding place and they end up splitting up all of the money they had stolen. And each person gets about 150,000 pounds, which is worth about 3 million in today money, which is not too bad of a haul for 30 minutes of work, dude. $3 million, obviously. They had to do all this. However, at this point, the police started using a new tactic, and they started to realize that they were closing in a lot faster than they thought, and what they thought would be a super safe location on the farm was pretty quickly getting zeroed in on by the police. And, they definitely did not want to get caught. So, obviously, they had driven these vehicles to the farm, and people along the way had seen them. So they leave the cars at the farm and they kind of group up and drive the gang to one of the other people's houses to kind of relax and clean up a little bit. And as soon as they get out of there, one of the people that had been specifically hired as a cleanup crew gets to work and he starts wiping everything down from fingerprints. And he was supposed to have burned it all down, and that was his job. So all of the rest of the robbers leave, assuming that this guy's gonna get to work cleaning everything. And this guy really screws everybody over, because he does wipe some fingerprints from some stuff, but he was basically supposed to torch the entire farm and burn it to the ground, and he just didn't do it. So obviously that puts a big screw up into things. And so the rest of the gang is like, okay, well, we have to go back to the farm and just see what's going on. And as they're going back to the farm, they find out that the police had now found the farm. So the guy who was supposed to be in charge of cleaning up the entire operation literally screwed everybody and just left all of the evidence for the police to find at the hideout. And once the police find the hideout, it's not very difficult. Obviously, considering the guy didn't end up burning down the farm, he also missed some fingerprints and palm prints, and they end up finding 11 of the people that were involved in the robbery. Of everybody who was captured, most of them ended up getting 30 years in prison. The most common thing that they were convicted of was 25 years for conspiracy to commit robbery and 30 years for armed robbery. And honestly, all things considered, it's very likely that they would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for the fact that the police literally ended up finding their hideout intact with most of the information there. A lot of them were able to go on the run pretty effectively, though. You gotta remember, this is the 60s, so a lot of the closed circuit television and all the stuff they use to track down people nowadays wasn't necessarily there to help track them down. Real talk, though, I definitely think it's interesting at the very least that they were able to get away with it for so long. A lot of them ended up getting out of the country and it took them forever to be tracked down. And as for the money itself, because a lot of them were able to go on the run for a little bit, they ended up blowing through the money pretty quickly. I'm sure when you're living on their run, you blow through money because you know you're probably not going to get to spend it much longer. So most of it was just never recovered. Nothing they could really do about it. Regardless, guys, I think that's going to do it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to press the like button. Let me know in the comments section down below what you thought of the video. Subscribe if you're new and turn on those notifications. If you want more content, I do have a podcast called the SKUFFED. You can find it at the link down below, along with the link to the intro song in the description if you want to give it a listen. And if you're in the mood for merch, the Teespring store down there also does have many options. But on that note, guys, that's going to do it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, don't get anyone pregnant. If you are going to do it, though, make sure they're hot, and hopefully I will see you guys all tomorrow with another video. I'm out. Peace. I'm gonna go rob a train.